Hi, I'm Varian Brandon, and I am a stranded colorwork designer. I live in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina, and today we're going to talk about, I'm working on two cardigans at the same time, both stranded colorwork, both similar techniques. The construction's a little bit different, and I'm at a kind of a stopping place for both of them, and I wanted to show you what I was working on. But before we can get into this, we're going to look at them closer up, but before we get into this, I wanted to sort of set the stage, if you will, for stranded colorwork, for those of you who don't know. For those of you who do know, bear with me, you've heard this several times, but there is such a thing called colorwork knitting, and that's sort of what I consider the umbrella. Now granted, I have a blog where I talk about all sorts of things about stranded colorwork, and there are lots of definitions. There's no definite, I call it the non-definitive definition, because everybody kind of has their opinion, and there are all sorts of, there's no absolutes, let's just put it that way, there's no absolutes. So, but the easy way for me to explain it is that there's this overall sort of arching something called colorwork knitting. And colorwork is a type of knitting that has more than one color in the garment. I say that it's easily described as if you took the color out, you wouldn't have anything. Like you can do colored cables. You can do the background of a cable in one color and the cable itself in the other. You can change the braids of the cable in different colors. You can do that. But if you took the color out and did it all in one color, you'd still have cables. Whereas if you took out something like for this for instance, if you didn't put any color in that, you just have a stockinette coat, which is what this is. Same thing with slip stitches or anything else. But so that's the sort of the broad definition in my mind of colorwork. So that colorwork then breaks down into different sort of motifs, if you will, different sort of, not motifs, but different sort of techniques to achieve that multicolored, garment. There's stripes, obviously. You took all the color out of stripes, you just have a stockinette or whatever garment. There is slip stitch, and its more fancy cousin mosaic stitchings. There's intarsia. There is various others that are kind of ishy, whether they fall into this category or not, but those are some of the bigger ones. The one that we're going to talk about today is called stranded colorwork. So stranded colorwork. You have intarsia colorwork, and then slip stitch colorwork. The interesting thing is that stranded colorwork sort of, you don't usually hear intarsia colorwork or slip stitch colorwork, but stranded, normally you kind of hear the colorwork on the end of it. And there are places where this particular type of knitting, stranded, is just referred to as colorwork, even though it's a more generic topic. It's like, I don't know, I was going to say calling all facial tissues Kleenex. It's not, and that's not exactly true because it's not a brand name. Never mind, forget that. Anyway, you have stranded colorwork. Stranded colorwork is where you have, generally but not always, only two colors per row or round, generally rounds, because it's easier to knit within the round, because then you have the public side of your garment facing you at all times. But that's not always true. That's just the general statements. You also have, it kind of divides up by motifs, the different types of stranded colorwork. The motifs are divided generally, but not always, roughly, can you tell this is not very specific? Roughly by geographic areas. The motifs are geographic, so you can look at, sometimes you can look at a motif and say, oh, that looks very Inuit, or that looks very Scandinavian, or that looks or Norwegian, or that looks like it came from Fair Isle. And there are some people, hopefully not so much anymore, but there are some people who call all stranded colorwork Fair Isle, which it is not. So Fair Isle is a specific, can't say that, specific type of stranded colorwork. And the motifs that are, and then within Fair Isle, because Fair Isle is a real island, Fair Isle. It's part of the Shetland archipelago. Sorry, I was like going arpeggio. No, that's not right. Archipelago, which is a group of islands. Fair Isle is one of them, of the Shetland Islands. The main island has Lerwick is its capital, and it's a big trade area. So they have a similar but slightly different version of a stranded colorwork based kind of on what is popular in Fair Isle. So it's called a Shetland Fair Isle. And then after that, anybody can name it. You know, we have the Painterly Fair Isle and the blah blah Fair. I don't know. Anyway, but I was going to tell you, it is that particular type of knitting, Fair Isle knitting, is pretty much done. This is a sweater of mine called Wilkins. It is done with all natural colors except for red. There are no red sheep unless they having to spray them for branding. But anyway, this particular type of Fair Isle work is stranded colorwork is Fair Isle, fairly typical. I was getting ready to show you the motifs, but there are overall patterns of Fair Isle. Lots of times you will see what's called a lozenge and an X, or sometimes an O and an X. And that's very typical of the Fair Isle or even Shetland Fair Isle patterning. And so it's sometimes called an OXO patterning. And that's what this one's called. It has little border bands here and little peries. These little peries are just things that separate it up. But it's done kind of in stripes. I mean, you could call that stripes. Bands is what sometimes bands of motifs. That's one. And these are, as I said, these are very natural colors. Another version of that, this one down here. Another version of that is another sweater of mine called Dublin pullover, and this was in and it is a pullover. It's a men's pullover, but I mean it's unisex as far as I'm concerned, and it is the same kind of thing, and it has an OXO patterns, but different. Here is your see, the background is brown, so here is your hello. I have to look at this closely. Let's get all that out of the way. There we go. The lozenge is now become sort of a cross, and then there's the X right there. Did you get that? So there's your lozenge that kind of looks more like a cross, and then that is the X, and those are in the blues because the background is brown. And then on the next panel, you have the, see if I can see that one. Hello. Oh yeah, the lozenge is really big there, and the X is much smaller there. So this is, as I said, this is a pattern that was in Interweave in winter of 2017, and I know they love me for this because every single one of these is got a different patterning, a different motif in them. I mean, they're all the same sort of numbers, so it all will fit in, but that's what that is. And I'm sure they love me for that because that took up a lot of real estate in that magazine. but that's a very traditional thing to do, is to make all those motifs different as well. Well, I've done a lot of those. I like those particular types of patterns. There's a lot you can do with them because you've got, it's sort of comforting because those patterns are symmetrical both horizontally like this and vertically like that. So they're very easy to memorize. And there's something really comforting about knowing that all of those motifs, the multiple of those motifs is going to fit completely around the body of the sweater. So that what happens is that your repeats are not very big so that you can do different sizes. And because if this is the length, it's probably about 16 stitches. If that is your stitch repeat, then you can go up one, that's about 2 inches maybe. Where is it? Yeah, about 2 inches. Then, it's very easy to go from a 34 through a 36 to a 38, and just by adding one more repeat, in the garment. There are, I think the Scandinavian motifs have a set number of repeats in the front and the back. And then to do the sizing, you actually may have partial motifs along the sides. Can. I mean, sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. But normally, the Fair Isle sweaters are, it all will fit in the round completely, so you have no partial motifs along the sides. So there's something very nice about that. You can change also. There's lots of traditional books with the traditional motifs in them. You can adapt them. They're very easy to add an extra stitch here or there to make them fit into whatever gauge that you've got going. It's there, and then there are lots of colors, and you can make them, you know, simple colors. You can do them in gradations of browns and blues, or any color you want, and as long as the contrast is heavy enough. And you see with this one, the contrast is not that great, but it still is a real pleasing sort of combinations of things. So, as I said, I've done those for a while. And then, of course, like me, I got tired of doing that. I want to do something else. So what I decided to do was to do what happens if you do asymmetrical patterns. Things that are not symmetrical vertically or horizontally. And so what I've decided to do is to do, let's see, where am I here? This is one of the cardigans we're going to talk about. We're going to look at it closer later on. That's this one, and it's a long, almost a tunic length. It comes down to covers the rear end is what it does. But that's this one here. We're going to talk about it more in depth than when I switch the camera over. But that's this asymmetrical thing, and right now it is got 7 colors. I think it's 7 colors in it, and texture. All these little light blue things are bumps, and and I told you that there's usually only 2 colors per round, but then you see I've added in all these other colors in, so there's no absolutes in this. So this takes a little while, but I loved it. It was fun to do. And I'm calling this, the working title is Grapes, because there's this bunch of grapes sitting right there. That's what I'm calling this one. As I said, we'll look at this one a little bit closer. The other one we're going to look at in just a second is this other cardigan I'm working on. This one's not quite as far along. They are both kind of in the same spot, and I'll explain that to you in just a minute. This one is only 2 colors. You see that? This one's only 2 colors. Eventually I may put some other sort of maybe shrimp, little hits of shrimp in it. I'm not sure yet what yet. But that's this one. This one is it's sort of kind of symmetrical. I mean, because you can see it's sort of kind of symmetrical this way on this axis right there, and of course these are the same, have an axis right there in the middle. But yeah, we're going to talk about how the sizing, how you adjust for size and grade for this in just a minute. But again, both of these have got a steek up the front to make this a cardigan. So let me move the camera around, and I will get over and we'll take a look at both of these cardigans a little bit closer. All right, as I said, you've seen this before if you've been watching my Instagram posts, and the other video I did about this particular, I was just at the swatching stage at that point. This one, as I said, is called, the working title is Grapes, because of the grapes that are right there. But this is a cardigan. Let's start down here at the bottom. We'll talk about this in just a minute, this stuff here. And I'm going to try not to hit the table too much because it is shaking. Can you see? It's shaking. It's like an earthquake. Anyway, we're going to start down here at the bottom. This one starts, what I wanted was a cardigan that would come down pretty long, and you can see this one is just, as I said, was sort of cover the rear end. But I also wanted to do, I love a 1x1 rib. I love corrugated rib too, but I love a 1x1 rib. The problem is that 1x1 pulls it all in, and if this is going to be kind of below the rear end, if you will, it would pull in, and I didn't want it to pull in. It's just not very flattering. So what I did was I made it in pieces, put a split up the side here, sort of a side mint, if you will. So this ribbing was in 3 pieces. There's the front, the 2 fronts here and here, and then the back. And then you put them all together on one needle. And then what I did is on a separate needle, cast on this little bit of a red I don't know, it's like a piping. It's just plain stockinette, and it just curls up. So then I took the live stitches from this and the live stitches from the rib and put them together in a 2-needle, not a bind off, but just put them together as the first row of this sort of tealy color is done in, is to put the two together, and do it in the round. And when I did that, I could cast on the steek for the front opening. So that's what this is the steek for the front opening for the cardigan. I did this little thing, and these little nubs, they're just knots. They're just, it is 5 stitches front and back into 1 stitch, and then once you get done with the 5, you take stitch number 5 and you take stitch number 4 and put it over stitch 5, then stitch number 3, then stitch number 2, then stitch number 1, and then you've got these little bumps here, and it just adds a little texture to it. They're kind of fun to do. I will tell you, they are harder to do here, because what that does is you end up with all of these tails for those. It's kind of an intarsia thing than they are here. They're much easier there. But what I'm doing here is that on my swatch, and if you saw the other video, you'll notice from the swatch that the background here looks more like this. And what I was trying to do is that this same sort of dark purple is in here. And on my swatch, I was thinking that perhaps the dark purple was disappearing into the black. So I was trying to use a lighter purple background, which just didn't work. But because I wanted to keep going, I just left it. And what I'm doing now, I ordered some more of the dark purple, and I just kept going. So what I'm doing now is I'm picking up stitches on the last row of this little teal, I don't know, I haven't put a name to that yet, but this little teal piece, and the first of the little Peary pattern here. And then I'm going to take this out and rebuild this using these colors here, and then do a Kitchener stitch around the top there. Pray for me. It will work. It will work. Just telling myself that. But so this is the piece I like the most, is this piece in here. That's the fun part. And then but it comes on up, and you end up, this is a modified drop shoulder construction. I'll put it down like this, so that when you get to the underarm, you put these stitches on a holder. That's what this red is these stitches are on a holder in here. And then when you come around after putting those on a holder, you cast on for the armhole steek, which is what that is. And then these sleeves will be, when I cut this steek open, these sleeves will be picked up, and the sleeve will work out this way, decreasing along the underarm until you get to the wrist. So they're really a top-down sleeve. And I am really, let's see if I can't make this better. Here we go. I am really fond, I kind of like that kind of a sleeve, because what it does is that these patterns, these pattern bands are going this way, and then these pattern bands are going that way. So you have this intersection of horizontal versus vertical bands. And it's a wonderful thing because sometimes you have a design opportunity. So this first band here can be something that, will be right at the shoulder, just a little below the shoulder, and can be a feature. So I may do this one. I haven't decided. I have to take a look and see what I've got on my notes. But then in the front here, you cast off the front steek, which is here, and then you pick up, you put a certain number of stitches, and I think this is either 8 or 6, maybe 6 or 8, I forget, I don't know, stitches on a holder, and then you do, and then cast on another steek for the front neck, and then you do decreases along this edge to give this sort of slope for the front. And I really just don't like crew necks that are really up at your throat. So this is a little more gentle. It's more of a round neck and not a crew neck. Same on this side. And then on the back, I have done another little tiny steek. It's like 3 rounds here. That makes the back just go down about 1/4 inch, just a little bit of a back dip. And then you see here it just is, all sorts of neat things. You see here the shoulder is got a 3 needle bind off. And what that does is I did it from the inside. You can kind of see it right there. Of course, it's in black, so it's not going to show up too well, but it's right in there. And what that does to me is, normally I would do a Kitchener stitch there, but what that would do is give it a little more stability, because this has got a lot of yarn in it. So, but that's this one. This is, as I said, working title is called Grapes, and it is. I just think it's pretty. There's no. I think another thing I want to talk about is that there's no. Go over there and behave yourself. There's no symmetry? What am I trying to say? No symmetry, either vertically or horizontally, like we talked about. And to make this, do the different sizes for this, I mean, the repeat is like 60 stitches. I mean, it's like, this is your repeat. So what is that? 8 inches. So from one size, if I did the repeat like you would do a normal, more Fair Isle type thing, the repeat would be, you go from a 32 to a 40. So somehow I had to cut this, and it's just so complicated. So what I ended up doing is, for other sizes, I would add, you see this and this are the same. So that's your repeat in here. And so for either sizes, I would just add different numbers of this here, if that makes sense. But what that does is, it doesn't give us a mirror image. Usually for a cardigan, you'll give a mirror image on either side of the central thing, the central opening. And I just didn't think it was necessary. It's complicated enough. It's not necessary. There was a time I debated having these leaves face that way and these leaves face that way. And then I would have to have done some sort of complicated thingy in the back. And same thing down here. So what I opted for, I just didn't think it was worth it. What I opted for was these leaves go this way, and then the smaller version of them, they're going that way. So it's something. It's something there anyway. So the next step for this is to cut the steek and pick up the stitches and start the sleeve. So that's my next step on this one. All right, this is the second one. This one I'm calling Red on Red. It is the working title. Does that make a lot of sense? This is actually, I had a bunch of red yarn that I was going to do something similar to this and have it maybe a burgundy here and a claret there. So it would be sort of a brocade, and not brocade. Yeah, sort of a brocade, jacquard, whatever I'm talking about, sort of effect. But I never could find the two reds that I kind of like to go, and I started looking at the blues and the browns and went, oh no, that's what it's got to be. But all my notes in my computer call this red on reds. Anyway, but this one starts with a hem like this, and then you do a purl turning edge like that. Now I haven't decided exactly whether I'm just going to whip that back and leave it like that. I might decide, since this is really, even though this is a sort of, curly Q thing, it's really a more fitted type, tailored type pattern. I might pick up all along here and do a little I-cord, sort of just a tiny little I-cord sort of piping around the edge here, and kind of in here up the front. I haven't really thought about that yet. I have also thought about maybe taking some like shrimp color and do a duplicate stitch there, and maybe of course every place there's that cross, maybe up here as well. I just haven't decided yet kind of how that's going to work, but it will only be in the border. I think the rest of it would be all blue and brown for the way that goes. This one I also decided I needed to have a split on the side. This is shorter. This one comes more like the hip bone instead of around the rear end. This one comes to about hip bone level. And so I did this steek here, thinking, and this is on the side. This is the side where the numbers are, that to be the side seam. And so what I thought I would do is I put this, the steek in here and cut it right there, and then fold it back like that, and then I would have this lovely little, once it's cut, it'd be both sides, it'd be kind of like that, have this lovely little vent. Well, the only problem is that I mean, yes, this is all asymmetrical, but I couldn't handle it. That should have been right there to make it right, and then that would set everything else off. And then I finally decided, oh, to heck with it, I'm not going to put it in there at all. So what I will do, I will write it up without it in there, but for this particular sample, I'll just sew it together so that it will not be there at all. So you will, when you see the pattern, you'll say, oh, it was supposed to have a vent, but it didn't. So that will go together, and then of course this will go together. It'll be just perfect from there. Same sort of thing with the sizing on this one. Instead of, this is sort of a mirror image on either side, just because of the way this pattern is, and it is a little bit asymmetrical vertically. It's symmetrical like this vertically, not horizontally, obviously, but vertically. And so when I need to add any sort of inches for a different circumference for larger or smaller sizes, I will either add or subtract extra stitches here and here. So a larger size would have, you see how this is a partial pattern here. A larger size would have more of the full pattern, you know, here, if that makes sense, to add extra, the extra width. I also decided to add a little bit of waist shaping, but I did it with, let's see if you can see it over here. It's kind of hard because it's on these needles, but I did it with smaller needles. So you can see there's just a little bit, oh, it's hard to see here, but there's a little bit of shaping kind of in here where there's 2 inches in here. It's about 2 inches. 2 inches in here that was done. This was on a size 4 needle. I think I take a size 2 needle and did it in here just for a slight little bit of waist shaping for that one. So the way this one is going together on the top is that I think I'm just about at the underarm. I'm not 100% sure. I need to check on that. But when I get to the underarm, I will do the same thing. I'll put a certain number of stitches, which will be right over here. I'll put a certain number of stitches on a holder under here, like this. And then I will do the sleeves. And I'll do the sleeves from the wrist to the underarm. And then what you'll end up with is a sleeve here and a sleeve over here. You guys, am I in frame? No? Okay. A sleeve over here and a sleeve over here. And I'll put them all on one needle. And then I'll end up doing decreases, much like a set-in sleeve, but they'll all be together. I'll do a certain number of decreases to make this go in like this, and then the sleeves will do a little of that, and then the sleeves will keep decreasing all on either side of a marker. And then at the very end, the sleeve stitches will be put on the shoulder. Will only be about that much left till you hit the shoulder. The stitches at this point up here will be put on a holder, and then I'll complete it all the way up to the shoulders, close the shoulder seams, and then stitch in by hand, seam in the top of the sleeve. And I'll go more in depth from that as we get to it. I've done this once before. It worked out fine. We'll see whether I can do it again. Anyway, so that is red on red. Okay, so there you have it. Both of these cardigans I'm working on. You can keep up with them. I'll post them on Instagram, and I may do some more videos on it too, just to sort of let you know kind of what's going on. It's they're both a lot of fun. They're both different, and it's really fun having two of them at the same time, because as I get to a design decision, or if I just get tired of it, I can always go to the other one. So it's really good to look at. So it's really fun to work on. Thanks for joining me. And if you could find me everywhere, here on YouTube, but also I've got a website. I'll put it all up at the end of the video or in the notes. I haven't figured out which one I'll do yet. I usually put it in the notes, but you can follow me anywhere, kid, if you're interested to see how these two turn out. So thanks, guys. Bye bye.